And on this podcast, we talk about our respective businesses, tips and tricks that we've learned over the past week and the past few years of running our businesses in the wholesaling real estate space. And so if you guys get any or have any questions or anything that you want us to touch on for the next episode, feel free to drop them below. And other than that, we'll get into it. So we typically like to start it off with some inspiration over the past week. That could be any books or podcasts or YouTube videos or anything else that has inspired us that we like to share. So you want to kick us off with that?
Yeah, glad to jump in. This was one of the weeks where I did more stuff and I kept track of what I actually dove into. I guess the first thing we were
Nice.
talking about offline a little bit is that I signed up for Strategic Coach, which is the entrepreneurial coaching program from the author of Who Not How, Dan Sullivan. So I'm super excited about that, and I've been going through their material. We got dogs in the background. And so, yeah, that's been inspiring to, think more about the 10X is easier than 2X concept and how to apply it to my business and my life, and look at the way they have structured this business of the Strategic Coach, which has coached tons of successful entrepreneurs, and a lot of them are very high profile people that you've heard of. But so that's been great for me. I'm reading this book called Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl, which is recommended by a lot of people on a lot of podcasts and stuff that I listen to as just something that everybody should read. So a man who survived concentration camps in World War II, and he was a psychiatrist, and he studied people in the, I guess he took his takeaways from surviving the concentration camp and talks about who survived and who didn't, and what some of the reasons are, some human beings or men's motivations are for survival and living. Anyway, I'm about halfway through it. It's good.
Nice.
It's a little bit intense, but it's also good, touching. I'm reading a book. I'm reading a bunch of books at once, which I do sometimes. I'm reading Mindset. Can't remember the author's name, but it's a book that's been recommended again on a couple of different podcasts I've listened to. And really the core that I understand of it is that mindset is something that can be expanded and changed and adapted. And there's this thing in human nature where people have a fixed mindset where they think that who they are is who they'll always be, and they don't have the ability to change their intelligence or their qualities of who they are. And this book is arguing that you do have the ability to do that, and you can go change from a fixed mindset to a more flexible growth mindset. So it's a pretty good book so far. I'm a couple chapters in. And then I got some books on audio just to listen to at the gym and stuff. So I've been listening to alternating between the Tao of Buffett, which I think, Jasper, you've read before, or you have a physical copy of that. But it's like his daughter and someone else just sort of collecting wisdom from Warren Buffett and sharing it in small kernels. And it's always inspiring, like his success based on his persistence, his sticking with one thing, his keeping things simple, but never stopping learning, and paying attention to human nature, all these things. It's great to just hear his wisdom. And then Peter Attia, who's a longevity guy, MD. He's got, he's all over YouTube and TED Talks and stuff like that. But he wrote a book called Outlive, which is a longevity book. And I'm 57, so I like to do anything I can to keep an edge and stay young and fit and healthy. So listening to his book, and that's good so far. I don't have a huge takeaway from it yet, but maybe one in a future episode. And then this morning I had some extra time because I got rained out on pickleball. So while I was doing other things, I was listening to Charlie Munger. Since I'm on the Warren Buffett kick, I listened to some Charlie Munger on YouTube, just some of his top quotes and nuggets of wisdom that somebody compiled on YouTube, which is really good. And he's always inspiring and really smart and wise and no nonsense. So that's my my roundup of all the stuff I've been consuming this week with working on my mindset and keeping positive and growing, learning.
That's awesome. Yeah, I listened to some Charlie Munger this week too, because I guess he passed sometime around last week.
Yeah.
So
99 years old.
Yeah, he lived a great long life.
Yeah.
But yeah, a bunch of people were putting together compilations and stuff, which was fun. So I listened to a few of those too. It's definitely inspiring. But yeah, for me, couple things that stood out to me this week. Number one, first thing was that Mark Cuban sold the Mavs for 3.5 billion.
I didn't know he sold them. Wow.
And yeah, I didn't know he was selling the team. I thought, but it makes sense because a few things. One, it's a partnership, so he's selling them, and he's basically selling them to one of the biggest tycoons in Vegas that owns hotels. And so she's a widow, but her and her husband built a bunch of the most prestigious hotels in Vegas. And so they're buying the team, but he's also partnering with her to bring gambling to Texas because apparently gambling's not like really uh, in the forefront in Texas. Like we have a few casinos here in Arizona, and Vegas is obviously the hub of gambling, but apparently not so much in Texas. So I think that's what Mark's trying to do next, is trying to kind of bring some casinos and stuff to Texas. And so that's part of why he's sold to this group. But
Amazing that
also
he sold the Mavs, though. He seemed to be so in love with the team and being the owner of the team, always
yeah,
side and everything. I'm shocked.
but I think he's
Actually, I didn't
still,
know that was new.
yeah, I think he still will be though, because he's still going to be the vice president of basketball for the Mavs. So
Oh,
I think
nice.
he'll still be pretty involved. It's like when we hear about people talking about buying small business and you keep the owner on as like a manager or whatever for a little amount of time,
Yeah.
So I think that's what he's doing. But super inspiring because he bought the team for 280 million and sold it for 3.5 billion. So I don't know what the return there is, but it's very good. And obviously, he won a few championships with them, and he took them from pretty much like a no-name team through a really popular team in the early 2000s with Dirk and Jason Kidd and everyone, and then now again with Luka and
Nash. He
everyone.
had Nash, too.
So yeah, Nash too. So yeah, very cool. But I hope he'll still be involved because he's definitely my favorite owner in the league. So,
Him and Ballmer.
but yeah, that was super inspiring. And then tying into that, just briefly, I watched some highlights this morning, and last night the Mavs went on a 30-0 run, so they beat their own record for the most points in a row, and they still lost the game. But it was really fun to watch because they were down 20 to start the fourth quarter, and literally they scored 30 points in a row. The other team didn't score.
Was it all Luka and
And
Kyrie?
yeah, Kyrie wasn't playing. It was all Luka. He was
Wow.
getting steals. He was just doing assists. It was like him and Seth Curry. They were just scoring like almost all the points, and then the center Derek Lively. But that was fun to watch, just to see them go on a run. They still lost to the Thunder, but it was a fun game. So I watched those highlights. But yeah, so that Mark Cuban selling was inspiring to me. I know I had another one I wanted to share with you, but no, I'm not. I'm not remembering. Um, Oh yeah. Another piece of news that inspired me. Elon finally launched the Cybertruck, so it's official. And so that was just inspiring to me because I mean, just looking at the car, like, he's the only person that would take something like that to market. Like it just doesn't even look like a real car, but now it's real and people are getting deliveries of the car. So that was super cool. And I
Wow.
watched this guy that I like to watch on YouTube. I watched his like review and breakdown of the whole car. It's super cool. And it's like bulletproof. It's stainless steel
Oh, wow.
exterior. Got the largest windshield wiper and the largest windshield ever made on a car. It's just one wiper that does this huge like thing for the windshield, and it's really fun. Obviously, it can tow because it's a pickup truck. It can tow like 12,000 pounds. It's 0 to 60 in 2.6 seconds. It's just incredible. And on his launch event, he did a really fun thing that like I would expect from Elon, but they showed this video of the Cybertruck racing a Porsche, and they were just in frame like those two cars they were racing, and obviously it beat the Porsche. But then after the finish line, they showed that the whole time it was towing a Porsche behind the car,
Oh,
so it beat a
no.
while towing a Porsche. So I just thought that was fun. It was like a quarter mile, whatever, but it's just fun marketing to do that. So that was just inspiring for me that he, after I think it's like 4 or 5 years since he announced it, but he actually did it. He brought it to market, and now they're going to just start rolling. And so I'm excited to hopefully see some on the road here. We'll see how long it takes, but I'm excited, and I'm in line for one, but that'll probably take a few years. But yeah, that's always inspiring to me. And then lastly, I watched this interview. I don't remember this guy's name. I don't know if they listed his name, but that was a fun interview with this guy. There's this YouTube channel I watch sometimes, and they go around in these cities and they like interview successful people. And sometimes they find someone who's like super cool and just lets them like into their house and lets them interview them. And so that was the case with this guy. And it was really cool because it wasn't like one of these people that we've always heard of. I've never seen this guy before, but he built a really successful security business, home security. and I think he sold that business. But he said he was doing $200 million a year at its peak, and then he said it took him about 17 years to build up to that point with the home security business, and then he launched a solar company. And he said within the first year they got to like 20 million in sales.
Wow.
But he said the only reason that he was able to do that was because he put in a foundation working on himself and his skills and all this stuff over the past 17 years. So then it looks like an overnight success in his solar business, but it's not, because he built the foundation over the last 17 years. So he was really well spoken, really cool guy.
Takes 10 years to make an overnight success.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And I think he said that his solar company is listed like top 100 or top 50 on the Inc. 5000, like fastest growing new companies or whatever. So that was pretty cool. But yeah, it's exactly like you said. Everyone will see his new company and be like, "Oh man, must be nice." But he put in all that time with the other business.
Yeah.
So it's really cool. And just a good interview. He talked a lot about things that we've heard before, but just a reticular activating system, focusing on what you want, having faith, having hope, and just going towards it every day. Another thing that he talked about that I like, that a lot of these guys don't talk about, they go on podcasts. He kind of had a different approach, whereas like he recommended, or what he did was that when he would get paid, he would split it into 3 buckets, which one was like his working money, one was tax savings for paying taxes, and then the third one was a reserve account. And so those 2 accounts, the taxes and the reserves, he would never touch, and he would just live on 1/3 of his income essentially. But he said with that, he would still, as his income grew, he would still allow himself to experience nice cars, nice homes, vacations, stuff like that. But he just wouldn't touch those other 2 buckets. And so he said for him, like, that was really beneficial, because if you're working all this hard and you never take time to reward yourself, then why are you going to be incentivized to continue working? So
Yeah.
I like that, because a lot of people just talk about, like Dave Ramsey, people like that. It's just like, never spend your money, just save all your money, don't be in debt, all the stuff. But this guy kind of had a slightly different
Yeah. And
approach.
grind. Yeah.
Yeah. So I appreciated that he took the time, and he has a beautiful home and nice cars and everything now, but he took the time to do that throughout the years too, so that he wasn't just grind. He allowed himself to experience some of that too.
Was this Noah Kagan or somebody else?
No, I can send you the link. It's called the School of Hard Knocks. That's the name of their YouTube channel. But I can send you the link. It's just a 15-minute interview, but the dude was.
Is it a young guy, white guy with dark hair?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I've seen one or two of those. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like a young kid. He's like 21.
Did he grab a football player in a parking lot one time too? I think I saw one.
I think so.
Like he just goes up to people and is like, "How'd you make your money?" And like similar to what Noah Kagan was doing. Yeah. I've seen him too. Yeah. That's cool.
Yeah, so it's fun. I like their channel too. It's inspiring to see these young guys just going around and just no fear. They just walk up to anybody. So I like it. But yeah, some of these people, like I said, they're super nice, and they invite him into their home. And like usually his clips are like 30 seconds a minute, but this one was like a 15-minute full-length video. So that was fun. But
you should
yeah,
share that. I can always post it in the comments or the notes on the podcast too.
Yeah, I'll make sure to send it after we get off. But yeah, that's it for me. So I'll move on to business check-in. So you want to kick us off with business check-in, highs and lows and victories and everything?
Yeah, sure. I look at my notes here. I mentioned strategic coach. That's not really business; it's more personal, but it's a victory for me. Mentioned I did the personality assessments that they have here, which they have a few different ones that'll help you know who you are and help your team also figure out how to work together and stuff. So excited about that for business. Like that's been one of my new avenues in business, is looking at these personality assessments and how we can maximize everybody's potential, put everybody in the right seat on the bus so that they're happy and in their sweet spot, and work together well, understand each other's communication styles, all these things. I've been working on that. So I did 3 assessments through strategic coach, which I think are fairly reasonably priced online. Kolbe is one, Kolbe. Another one is called Print, Print, and it's all capitals. And then what's the third one? Something strengths. No, it'll come to me. But I did three of those this week, which was good. As far as victories, we sold a deal this week, which was a lead that we got from land prospecting, which is what we do mostly, but we have been doing more houses lately too. But we were marketing a land list in SMS, and we got this seller had 3 lots, 2 vacant lots, and 1 lot that had a tear down what they said was a tear down house. They're out of state seller in Maryland, where this property's in North Carolina. So we bought the lots we combined two and called it one lot. We bought that for got it under contract for 3,000. And then we got this tear down house on a lot I think it's like a half acre lot for 3,000 also. We just went under contract with a buyer on that for 20K. And that is an owner finance deal as well. And we charge 10%, which we should probably be charging more with the interest rates up higher. But that means we'll probably make 22 or 23K on that deal that we are buying for 3K. So that was a big victory. And then, something else I was going to say about that one. Oh yeah, they're coming in with 4,500 down payment. We're buying that for 3, so that means we're instantly in the black on that, and then they're paying 500 a month. So that's just 500 a month in cash flow. And like I said, the profit will end up being like close to 20K on that. So that's awesome, exciting. We closed on 3 lots. We chose to buy another deal similar to this that also came from a land list on SMS. 3 lots, 2 of them are mobile home lots, about a half an acre, and one actually has a mobile home on it that was lived in until just recently. So we decided to buy that so we had control of it rather than trying to wholesale it and potentially have somebody go around us, because it felt like it was a good profit deal. So we did close on that this week. That's a victory, and it's on the market now. And then as far as KPIs go, we got 2 contracts this week. I think those are both from SMS, just vacant land lots. We sold one this week, which ended a drought for us. We had like 3 weeks of no sales, which was frustrating because we've got like 15 properties in disposition, but for whatever reason we have not been able to sell things. I could go into that with challenges probably, but anyway, we sold the one that I mentioned already, the tear down house. But the people are actually going to go in there and fix it up. They have carpentry skills and stuff, so they're going to try and fix it up and live there or flip it. I don't know which. 2 contracts, 1 sold, and we had no closings. We had really challenging. This, I guess, I could segue into challenges from KPIs here. I think we had like half a dozen things in escrow at the start of November, and I think we ended up closing 2 or 3 of them. So that's one of the challenges of doing this business, is that there are variety of things that can come up after you get a contract and then sell a deal to a buyer. You can still have things that come up, and we had that happen in spades this month. We had a JV deal where there's an estate file that named heirs that weren't named by the seller or disclosed by the seller, so that's probably going to go south. We had one where these are 3 that were scheduled to close this month that didn't close. We had another one that we had the buyer and the earnest money deposit in, and then we found out that there was a judgment, a lien on the property from the Department of Justice for $1.5 million, which to me seems crazy that a vacant lot worth 25 or 30 has a lien for $1.5 million on it. But I guess this person must have lost a lawsuit, and so they garnished the only property that they had, which I guess is this vacant lot. This is just my guess. I don't even know for sure, but and we don't know what the lawsuit is about, but we're just decided we were out on this. We're not, the seller ghosted us when we started asking about this lien. They just wouldn't respond to us at all. So we're like, okay, we're done with this. So that's 2 that got canceled. And then a third one I talked to about last week, so I won't belabor it, but the seller is older, elderly man, and he changed his mind about closing on the day before closing day when a mobile notary was at his house with I know. I mean, we can laugh about it because this stuff happens so much, but like, I'm just thinking about people listening to this podcast. If it's like your first deal, just don't give up, because this stuff happens. The first contract I got, Jasper, I was just thinking about this when I was on this thread, is like that house in Durham was the very first contract I got in downtown Durham. And it seemed like it was going to be a great location and somebody was going to jump on it. And I showed it to a lot of people and just couldn't get it assigned, and I ended up canceling that contract. So that was my first one.
Yeah.
But anyway, this one all the way in escrow, and the buyer had deposited not only the earnest money, but all of the purchase funds she had wired into the attorney because we were closing the next day. The mobile notary is at the house of the man who's selling, and he said, I changed my mind, basically. I mean, not in those exact words, but, and then he had something about he had 2 other lots over there that he wanted to sell. And so we're like, okay, great. We'll buy those too. Here's an offer. And then he, waffled on this, and I'm talking to his assistant or his aide about this whole thing. So anyway, just a big mess. And so we ended up refund all the money to the buyer. We're still deciding whether we're going to do a specific performance suit on this. We did. That's the one, Jasper, I asked you to help me file the memorandum on, because we've got a memorandum of contract on that, which protects us if he tries to sell to anybody else. I don't think he's going to try and do that. I think he's just older and a little bit confused and whatever else is going on with him. But so I sent him a certified letter is what I did, and just said, hey, if you don't get back to us and schedule this closing by 5 days from the receipt of this letter, we're going to take legal action. So then if we don't hear back from him, we'll decide if we actually are going to take legal action, which, as you know, Jasper, costs money. Specific performance. We've talked about this in the podcast before, but you can force a seller to sell to you. Jasper did it successfully this year. I failed one time this year. But I failed because of other circumstances, because the wrong person with the same exact name as the person we were under contract with, and it was just a big mess. But anyway, this one we have grounds for a specific performance suit, but you have to put up a retainer with the attorney, and they keep the money even if you're not successful. So you have to decide whether you're willing to take that risk. But anyway, those are challenges. And I just wanted to elaborate on that because I did look at my numbers a little bit. We've gotten 81 contracts this year, and 7 of those were canceled in the acquisitions phase. So that's like 9% of the contracts we've gotten. We've sold 70 of the contracts that we got this year, and we've closed 45 so far. So that's insane.
That's great.
Well, it's great that we closed 45 deals, but it's not great that we sold 70 and closed 45. Because that means like 35% of them fell out or so. But that's crazy. But that's kind of what to expect. Like if you're going to put deals in escrow, this is why you keep plugging, and that it's a numbers game, because for every 10 you put in escrow, you might close 7. You might have to accept that as a reality. I don't know what your rate is, Jasper. I think our attrition rate is worse because we're dealing with land, and we tend to have title issues and heirs issues more maybe than with houses. But still, expect to sell and close, 7 out of 10 or something. I don't know, Don't expect to sell. And don't expect that when you get a contract, that's an instant payday, That's the lesson here, I think. But yeah, I guess that's all for me with challenges, victories, KPIs. Still, like I said, happy about the one that's locked up for a 20K profit, and excited about the other one with the 3 lots. I think we'll be able to profit, a nice 5-figure profit on that one as well.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah. And that's my business check-in.
Awesome.
I'll toss it over to you, Jasper.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I just wanted to chime in for anyone listening real quick about the specific performance, because I just actually finally got my final invoice and like reimbursement or whatever, so I can share a bit more. Like I've shared on past episodes about the deal that I was working on with specific performance. But anyways, the attorney that I worked with, they charged a $7,500 retainer up front, which was pretty steep for me. And that's why, in years past, stuff like that would happen, and I would just file a memorandum, or I would just like, oh, okay, I would just kind of roll over. And so I would say it's not necessarily a strategy that beginners can't do, but make sure that the profit on the deal is sizable enough so that, let's say, for example, maybe your retainer is less, but let's say your retainer is like 5K. Make sure that you're okay losing that 5K, not losing, but spending 5K to get your deal closed. So I would say, like, if you're not making 20K, I'd say it's probably not worth it, because it's going to take you a lot of time. It's going to take money.
Yeah.
And so I finally know how much mine cost, which was $4,000. So I got a refund for $3,500, which is nice. And it makes sense to me. It took like 4 months, and they did file a lot of paperwork. They had to reach out to him a lot because this dude was super flaky, and they had to deal with his attorney a lot. And we pretty much filed everything we could file. Like, they started it, they filed the suit, and then it didn't work the first time. So then they filed a list pendants, and then it didn't work that time. So then they filed a judgment with the court or something to actually take it to court, and then it finally worked that time. But then we had to reschedule multiple times. So I think it was well earned, their money on this one. But I just wanted to share that for anyone listening, that for me, I filed in July and we closed in October, and it cost $4,000 for the legal fees and everything.
Yeah, and it was worth it because you made a big profit, right? I mean, you made a good enough profit to make it worth it.
Yeah, so after the 4,000 and a few other fees and stuff, I think we were right around 25. So it was still a good profit.
Completely worth it.
Yeah. And so it was worth it in that case. But like I said, if the deal was maybe like 15, I would maybe do it. But probably like 15 to 20 is what the minimum that I would consider filing specific performance. Like if you're making 10, I would just file a memorandum and kind of just keep it moving. But yeah, just wanted to share that.
Well, I want to just emphasize the takeaway too, that you successfully won. Like, this might sound crazy if you're new in the business, but the seller refused to sell, but Jasper had a contract, so he sued them, and they were forced to sell to him, and that the law upholds that. So it's kind of a creepy concept, but it's real. And so when I mentioned me failing, it wasn't because it was an extenuating circumstance. I mean, I don't know. We don't have a big sample size of this, but I just want to emphasize that you filed the thing and you succeeded. We were under contract, or there was some crazy thing where there were two people with the same name but different middle initial, and that's where there was a confusion, and we ended up buying the wrong property or suing. So ours didn't fail because of the suit. The suit didn't work. It failed because of a confusion in the records, public records. So I just wanted to say that it does work. It really works.
Yeah. And to expand on that, like, this is my first time doing it. So like you said, small sample size, but from listening to other people talking about specific performance, I think it's pretty much like pretty high percentage you're going to win. Whereas when you file a memorandum, it's not a guarantee. I think it's like, I don't know, 70% that you're going to get a call back.
Maybe.
If you file a memorandum. Yeah, maybe it's 50-50, but I think it's at least 50-50 with a memorandum. But with specific performance, I think it's pretty much like 95% that you're going to get the deal back. But I will say just a couple things. One, make sure in your contract, anyone listening, that you do have a clause that states that you can file for specific performance if they don't perform. Because I heard after the fact, I have that in my contract, but I heard that if you don't have that, then sometimes a judge would dismiss it if it gets to a judge, and sometimes it won't get to a judge. But make sure you do have a clause in there that just says, hey, if seller defaults, then buyer can pursue specific performance. It can be as simple as that. Just make sure it's spelled out in black and white. And I think that's all you need. And then just make sure, as you're getting started, it's not the first thing I would do, but maybe within your first year, just find an attorney that would help you out with something like this. Because for me, it actually took me a lot of time to find someone. And it was actually a shout out to CG that I got a connection from someone in CG, because I called like 10 plus attorneys just in my local market, and most of them just declined me, which was weird. But I finally got a connection. So
it is weird because one of them was the guy who did mine, right?
Yeah. Well, he just never got back to me, so it's different than declining.
And honestly, I mean, to be honest, my guy charged $1,500, which is really cheap compared to what Jasper found. But I just got referred another specific performance attorney too, by Mike Parker, who's an attorney.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so I'll check with them too and see where they're at, and if I end up pursuing this one, and we can use it, reference, compare.
Definitely. Yeah, so anyone listening, if you're working in North Carolina, we can refer you a couple people that we know. So you can feel free to comment or reach out to us. But yeah, enough on that. I'll move on to my business check-in. So for the week this week, I can run down KPIs real quick. So for this week, we got 141 leads, which was one under last week, but still love to see 100 plus leads again every week. That's really nice. And we got out 60 offers this week, which is great. And got one contract, sold one, and closed two. So those are the KPIs for the week. So pretty good week overall. Felt like we made some good progress. I'll just do a brief synopsis on these deals that we did close in case it's helpful for anybody. So the first one was in Durham. This one, we launched the campaign for this specific property on August 14th. And then we got the deal. Let's see. We got the contract on Halloween on October 31st. So from August to October, it's about 2 full months ish until we got the contract, and then we closed it this past week. So end of November. So this one was not too long, only about
Yeah.
2 months of follow-up.
Pretty good
And then
timeline.
on this one, I'll shout out to Duncan, our favorite notary on the podcast, because I think I might have shared this when we got the contract, but it was quite difficult to get this one signed because it was a husband and wife that were still married, but they were on the outs, and they really weren't getting along at all. And so the husband was the one who we initially spoke to, and he was totally on board. He was ready to sell. He was just like, I just want away from this woman, away from this house. You know, it's kind of like their house together, so he just wanted to get out of it. I think she shared the same sentiment, but she didn't want to talk to us. Kudos to Duncan, because Duncan went out there. He met with them both, and it didn't work the first time, but he really he was almost like a therapist. I was talking to him after the appointment, and he signed immediately. The husband did. Wife was like, no, like she wasn't buying it. But at the end of the appointment, Duncan got her to agree to come back a couple of days later, like give her time to think about it, kind of cool off a bit. And he said, like, it's funny. He said to me, he was like, I don't think he would ever hit a woman, but man, he might have gotten close today, because the husband was really, really frustrated because he just wanted to sell the house and she wouldn't sign, you know. So he was super pissed. But kudos to Duncan, because he came back Halloween night and he got it signed by her. She came back that night. And kudos to her as well for, you know, kind of giving in and working with us. And after the fact, she was super pleasant to work with. It was just up until getting the contract signed was difficult. And so that was kind of a fun story. But shout out to Duncan for getting that signed.
Yeah, he's doing a thing for us today too, where he's meeting people at a. Do you mind if I interject a Duncan story?
Yeah.
So Duncan's a mobile notary that we both love, that does odds and ends for us. He does notary, but other stuff. But we've had a property where it's what they call a flag lot. And so that's where you have a skinny long entryway, and then the bulk of the property is behind the property on the road. So the neighbor keeps turning people away when we try and get them to go look at the property and saying nothing's for sale back here. So I'll just keep it brief, but Duncan's basically going there to usher people in and make peace with the guy in the front and be like, hey, dude, just show some people the property, you know, hope you don't mind, because he's good at that. So anyway, it's invaluable to have somebody like him on the ground doing stuff.
I just
definitely. Since you were doing a Duncan story, throw one in there. Shout out.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and I think we've touched on it before, but mobile notaries can be a great addition to your team, especially if you're wholesaling things virtually, like outside of your market. Then it can be a great addition to your team to do almost anything like we talked about. But it was funny because after we signed, I spoke to both of them when we got the deal started. After we signed it, she was like, "Yeah, I wouldn't have signed, but Duncan really, Duncan was the deciding factor." You know, she said he was super sweet and super nice with him. So I thought that was awesome.
That's great.
But yeah, and the closing after that, like I said, was very smooth. It was just some hiccups like getting the contract signed. So that was the first one that we closed this week. The other one was Hope Mills, North Carolina. I'll break this down briefly. So we got the contract day before Halloween, so October 30th. We closed it this past week. And this one was from a campaign that we launched in June of 2023, targeting Cumberland County. And so that took a few months to get contracted. And then we closed in about a month. For this one, the difficulty was it was kind of on me and on my team on the front end, because standard on our contract, we put 60 business days. Shout out to you, because you told me to just put longer time frames. Then you give yourself way more time to sell it. And also, a lot of sellers aren't going to be privy to like business days. They're just like, oh, 60 days, whatever. But really, 60 business days is like 100 days plus, especially around the holidays. That's like almost 4 months, So, anyways, so I added that to my contracts a while back when you told me to. And so, but in this case, it kind of bit me in the butt, because she just took that at face value, even though. So it's a teaching point for me and my team, and I've already addressed that. But she kind of took that at face value when she read the contract, because she was like, oh, 60 days. Okay. And we signed, like I said, end of October. So she was planning on an end of December close. And I was like, well, no, I want to close ASAP, but there were tenants in the property. And so she was like, oh, well, I gave them until the end of December. I was like, oh, I don't want to do it at the end of December, because then we're pushing into the new year, and, all kinds of stuff happens around that time. And so, to make a long story short, we got creative with it a little bit. And I basically just told her, like, hey, well, what if we could incentivize the tenants to move out sooner? And she had no idea what I was talking about, but we've done this a couple times before. And so basically I just sent the tenants $1,000. They moved out this past week, and we closed it a month early. And so that was awesome. And I also got the buyer to agree to increase their price by $1,000. So there's no water off my back, and I made the same amount of profit. So it was awesome. But that's long story short. There's a few other hurdles to jump over, but it was awesome. And just for anyone listening, money does seem to motivate tenants, especially tenants. And so anytime
All
if you
that
have some
cash
tenants,
for keys, you probably heard it.
yeah, exactly. And so anytime if you have tenants or if you have something similar where maybe you're trying to close the deal sooner, or I guess that's probably the only thing, or if the tenants are maybe being difficult, then you could do it as well. But in this case, they were super friendly tenants and they were super easy to work with. And I drafted up a brief agreement just to defend myself before I sent her the money, but she was super easy to work with and she got out on time. So that was nice.
That's great.
Yeah. So those are the two that closed this week. It's kind of a breakdown on those. Otherwise, I feel like I had another thing I wanted to share with you, but now I'm not remembering it. Yeah. Oh, yeah. I could share this. This is like a challenge and a victory, kind of, but I could share it for people listening because I made a mistake this week. So I sent out a property on Monday, and I got a few offers right off the bat. So that was good, but two of the offers were like 10 to 15,000 below my asking price. So I was like, oh man, maybe I sent this out too high. So I was starting to kind of work it more, call all my buyers and stuff because I thought I sent out a good price. And then I just got an offer that came in over asking price. So I was like, oh, and I just accepted it. And so I accepted that dude's offer, and we went under contract and all this stuff. And then after we went under contract, he called me and he was like, oh, well, I don't want to deposit this earnest money until after I see the property and all this stuff. And he was seeing the property next day. So I was like, oh, well, that's fine. We can just have the deadline end of day next day. But that was a mistake by me. And after I sold it to him, I started getting calls, like callbacks from all these people I reached out to, and they were trying to like get me to sign with them after I'd already signed. And I'm not going to do that because I don't think that's right. But they were like, I'll give you more earnest money, I'll give you more money, I'll close sooner, all this stuff. And I was like, well, I'm not going to do that. I already signed a contract. But the lesson is for me and for people listening, even if you think the deal might not be like a hot deal, I would always recommend sticking firm to what's in your contract, which is deposit earnest money by the end of the day when they sign the contract, just so that you have a bit of leverage. Because in this case, I gave him like the kind of due diligence period or whatever for an extra day until he saw the property. And so he could have just backed out and I could have been back at square one, which didn't happen. He followed through and everything. We're going to close it. But that was just a lesson for me for next time to just like not bend on what's in my contract and just make sure that I do get that deposit up front so that I have at least I can keep that if they decide they don't want to go through with it. So
Yeah, good tip.
but
What I have a question for you. Do you turn on utilities on these houses, or do you just say as is completely? Like when people ask you, like, "Hey, can we get the water, electricity cut on?" Do you do it, or is it case by case, or do you just never do it and just say it's as is? Take your chances.
yeah, I never do it, but also 99% of my deals are occupied, so it's already on.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, but on the vacant properties, I never do that.
Yeah, because we're in the process of trying to get the water and electricity turned on at this one mobile home, and it's been a little bit of a hassle. But I did it the
Yeah,
last time I had a vacant house too. I turned everything on because, I figure it's fair. People want to go through there and see that the toilet's flush and the sinks run and the lights turn on and all that stuff. But
yeah,
it is something to think about. It's this one in this one we have in Robeson County. You mind if I tell a brief story about this
yeah,
one? It's a funny little anecdote. Is so we got this. This is a 3 lots, one with a mobile home. So we got this thing, and I'm like, okay, well, we got people queued up who want to see this, so we want to get the lights and electricity turned on. So I was able to go online and apply for the electricity, and that's not a big deal. It's like an online form, you fill it out, et cetera. And then we call the water department, and so I think I had Alistair, one of my team, called first, and they said, "Oh, you got to come in person. You got to bring a copy of the deed. You got to bring your social security card. You got to bring ID. Blah blah blah." And he was like, "Really? There's no other way?" And she's like, "No." And so then Creasa, another person from my team, called, and she couldn't get any love. And so I was like, "Okay, let's see if I can get to the bottom of this and just try and like really, like, oh." And so I call the woman down there at the water department, and gives me the same story, and I'm like, really? So what do you do when somebody's out of state? Like I'm 2 hours away from there. Like I can't just hop over there. And she's like, "Oh, you gotta bring it in still. You gotta bring it in." And I was like, "What the heck?" Like, so then I'm thinking, do I really have to drive 2 hours down to this property to like bring my social security card to get the water turned on? And this
that's so,
woman was being a stonewall at the water department. And so then
yeah,
my girlfriend Ann was like, "Well, let me try it. I'm pretty good with people." And so I gave her all the information and she tried it and she got it. But the workaround was you have to have a real estate agent take all your documents in for you, like a licensed real estate agent. So
Huh.
weird, but now we're going to find a real estate agent down there to like and fax them the documents and have them take them in and turn on the water. But anyway,
That's
that's
so
kind of
weird.
why I was asking, because it's just like I'd much rather sell something without turning everything on, but it's only fair to the buyers also. So,
Yeah.
but it's not always a slam dunk. It's not always just a phone call. Like in Durham, I
Yeah.
think you just make a phone call and they come and turn it on. You give them a credit card
Yeah.
over the phone and they just come turn it on. But this was Robeson County, and they're like, "Oh no, you got to come in here and bring your whole life story." Like, really?
I know.
A copy of the deed and my social security card? Come on.
Yeah.
Like, you should need a driver's license and a credit card at the most.
Yeah.
So anyway, crazy, crazy
Yeah.
sidebar.
The smaller counties are always much harder. Like Durham is super easy. You can do it all online. You can do it with a text. You can do it with a
Yeah,
call. It's super easy. They have an app. They have a mobile app, but but like the county I'm flipping a property in, you have to call them up. And for when I had to get the water started, I had to send something through the mail. I didn't have to go in person, but you did have to send through the mail a bunch of stuff for them to even turn the water on. So
yeah.
yeah, the smaller counties are definitely
And
more
then
difficult.
sometimes they make you meet the person out there. Like somebody's got to be there to meet the person when they
Yeah,
turn it on. It's like, come on, go
yeah,
turn the water on.
I know.
All
Yeah,
right. Well, that's
unfortunately,
too much of a sidebar for that,
unfortunately, I was
probably,
gonna
but just another
what's
little
that?
thing that we deal with.
Yeah. Yeah, I was gonna say that most of my deals have been occupied lately, which is, I guess, it's good from that standpoint, but it presents challenges in other ways. So
Yeah. Yeah. Like you just mentioned, cash for keys,
yeah,
which
but
doesn't
yeah, I
always
love
work,
when
but
I get a vacant house. It's always much better to have something vacant and put a lockbox on there.
yeah,
Oh,
it's great that that worked for you so easily.
yeah, that was like the easiest one I've ever done. But yeah, in the past, like I said, you can get creative with tenants. You can give them cash for keys. One time, I paid a person's like security deposit, first month's rent for their new place. For the tenant, and so you can get creative with them and just work with them, nicely rather than threatening them. That's always been my experience.
Yeah. I remember
Unless the tenants are like really nasty, but
you got one of the women you worked with who was you got her like a hotel room and a moving company and stuff.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. One of the tenants, yeah, I did that too a couple times. But one tenant I put up in like extended stay in Durham. I put her up for like a month in extended stay because she didn't have an apartment lined up yet. So that works too. And extended stay is like super cheap, relatively, but it's very affordable. But yeah, I think that's it for me this week. The main challenge for us has just been contracts lately. We're really feeling the shutdown in October is like hitting now because we didn't have as many leads to turn over in
Yeah.
October. So now we're having a much slower November. Hopefully
And
December will be a little
SMS
bit.
is still slow. Like, I mean, we got the new templates from Launch Control, but we're still at like 8 or 9% response rate. So
Yeah.
like less than half of what we were getting prior to the crackdown. So it's gonna show up in the future. I mean, I see it in my pipeline because ours started in July. So like we got
Yeah.
we got our teeth kicked in basically by the crimp in the pipeline.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
yeah. And
Yeah. So now
go ahead.
what's that?
Go ahead. Sorry.
No, you're fine. But yeah, I was just saying the same thing basically, but now we're really feeling that from October. I feel like we'll feel it this month and next month, unfortunately, and then it'll start to pick up because you usually feel it, 60 to 90 days after whatever your marketing actions are. So,
Yeah. Yeah. It really
but yeah,
hurt our end of the year push.
yeah, definitely hurting that for me. But we did launch PPC this past week. We launched that on Monday, so I'm excited to get some leads coming in. And then the cold calling has been going well this time around with the multiple agencies and stuff. So we've been pulling in, like I said, at least half, maybe a bit more than half of our leads during the week now from cold calling. So that feels good to kind of be diversified a little bit.
That's great.
Um,
We're doing the direct
but
mail to diversify, and we have the
yeah,
text platforms.
yeah. But I think for launch control, I don't know. I might give it till like the end of January at the most. I'll probably cut it after January if it's no improvement because it's very expensive
It's
when
very,
you're not getting when you're getting a return. It's just like, oh, it's whatever. But when you're not getting a return, the credit card charge hurts you a little bit every
yeah.
month. So yeah, I just got to monitor it more closely. That's just what I'm doing right now, and we'll see. Hopefully it'll improve, but if not, we'll move on.
Yeah, well, like I said, Smarter Contact is still the Wild West. You can do whatever you want on there.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good. But yeah, I guess that's about it for me. I mean, like I addressed my challenge. My challenge right now is just getting contracts, but the solution to that is hopefully PPC and more cold calling. So that's what I'm doing right now.
Yeah. I think the
And
other
we'll
bigger
see how.
picture thing that I'd want to mention, because this is, another year that I'm experiencing this, of like, you notice in September, October that you're a little bit behind on your annual goal, and you try and push, but it's like that push, like by the time December hits, it's all over. I feel like it's all over.
Yeah,
It's frustrating.
you're
It's
just
sad.
pushing for the next year.
And
Yeah,
I'm behind, way behind where my annual goal was, and it's very frustrating. But like the time to really get serious and really crack down and crunch is September, really, probably, right? And trying to get every deal in escrow closed by the end of November, and don't even count December as a month, because
yeah,
if you try and get your annual revenue goal, everything in escrow by the end of November, like by November 30th, I'm going to have hit my escrow, my goal. Then you got the ones that are going to fall out, the ones that are going to get postponed in December, you'll
hmm,
still be okay. But, you know, this is I would call it like holiday itis. It just starts the week before Thanksgiving, and everybody just starts getting slower and pushing things off, and talk to me after the holiday and this and that.
yeah,
We're getting so
yeah,
many of those people like, yeah, just give me a call after the first of the year, call after the
yeah,
holidays, like everything just gets pushed off. So
yeah,
it's like, I just want to, for me, if I notice in September that I'm behind on my goal, I need to ramp everything up like 2x, 3x at that point in September,
hmm,
because it seems like, oh yeah, we got 3, 4 months, but you don't really. The year is January to the end of November. It's not, you know,
yeah,
December doesn't even count
yeah.
in this business, in my
Definitely
in my
agree.
experience. I mean,
Yeah,
and
I
that's,
definitely agree.
of course we can get some stuff done, and we'll close a couple deals in December, but it's not gonna move the needle. I mean, that's
Yeah,
pessimistic, but it's also realistic.
yeah, that's a great point.
That's my 2 cents on the bigger picture thing.
No, that's a great point. And actually, for me, Um, one of the things that was really helpful this year that I didn't track in years past. So for anyone that's newer starting out, like if you're just starting out, I recommend you track your cash conversion cycle from the beginning because it's really easy to track when you're getting started, but backtracking is much harder. So for me this year, I started tracking that, and all that means, it sounds fancy, but it just means when you spend $1 on marketing or when you spend $1,000 on marketing, put that down, whatever you spent it on, if it's direct mail, texting, calling, whatever. And then whenever you close a deal from that spend and you track it back to that month. So let's say you spent $1,000 in January, $2,000 in February, $3,000 in March or whatever. Then you close a deal from January back in let's say July. Then you trace that revenue back to January. Like, okay, if it was just that one deal, then it takes you 6 months to recover your cash. And that's essentially the cash conversion cycle. And so for me, earlier this year when texting was crushing it, I was, I think, at like 70 days ish, which is about over 2 months. Now I'm all the way up to 111 days. And so that means, to your point, that's almost 4 months. So September, to your point, if you want to close a deal in December, you got to spend in September, maybe even a bit earlier. And so that's what I'm learning. It's been really helpful for me to have that data because now I know going forward next year, let's say my cash conversion cycle remains the same at 111, then like you said, I would need to really make a ramp in early September, end of August to see those deals close in November, December. Because if my cash conversion cycle 111 days, that's about 4 months. So I really need to, you know, spend that money out in August, September. So you're absolutely right. But just for anyone new or starting, that's something that you could track.
And if you don't have money for, marketing spend, then we're just talking about, using Propware to pull lists and making your own cold calls, whatever, but ramping up the volume of activity.
Yeah.
If you're not don't have a big budget for spending, you can still ramp up your activity.
Yeah.
So, um, Propware has free lists, and making your own phone calls and text is free. Even
Yeah.
though text is kind of crazy right now with the crackdowns, but you can still do it.
Yeah.
Or maybe it's not free if you're doing a multi-dollar or a text platform, but it's still fairly inexpensive.
Yeah.
All right.
Awesome. Well, that is about a wrap. Do you want to close out with appreciations and then we can wrap it up?
Yeah, sure. I even pulled up the James
All right.
Clear thing. The Atomic Habit guy has a newsletter Jasper
Sweet.
and I subscribe to. He's always got quotes and things in there. So I like this one, so I'll read this one because it's fairly brief too. Well, there's a couple in here, actually. I'll read two of these. This one's from James Clear. You're not the cause of everything that happens to you, but you are responsible for how you respond to everything that happens to you.
That's a
Um,
good one.
yeah, and then this one is a quote. Well, no, this is another James Clear. Life is harder when you expect a lot of the world and little of yourself. Life is easier when you expect a lot of yourself and little of the world. High standards, low expectations. Don't expect the world to give you
Yeah,
stuff.
I love that. I love that.
Yeah, it's a good one.
I recently heard, I think it might have been on that Morgan Housel podcast or one of his books that I recently read, but it was something very similar where he said happiness is just the difference between your expectations and reality. So I think some people go through life just expecting the world, and some might call that entitlement or whatever. And then when it doesn't happen, then they're super either frustrated or sad or whatever. But if you can just keep your expectations, like that quote said, kind of just even keeled, not don't expect the worst, but just expect average, then you'll be surprised when things go better. So,
Yeah, don't expect the world to give you things, but expect yourself to be able to be self-reliant. Go out and get it.
yeah. And I broke down one too from James Clear. I think it was from his one last week, not this past week, but it was the question that he left. And he said, half your problems are just your mind making minor things seem like major things. What are you overemphasizing right now? I like that one.
Good one. Yeah.
Yeah. So do you want to close out with appreciations and we'll wrap it up?
Yeah, sure.
Um,
I appreciate that it warmed up here in North Carolina. We had a really cold spell last week, and then today's in the 60s. Yesterday it was in the 60s. So that's awesome. That's part of the nice thing about living farther south than where I grew up, which was New York.
yeah.
You get a lot of these Indian summer days. So I'm grateful for that. Grateful for my health and feeling good and feeling strong, and the gym I have to be able to go work out, and um, just being able to be active. And I appreciate you, Jasper, for doing this with me. And I always learn from you every week when we do these meetups. So thanks for crushing it in business and teaching me or showing me new things all the time. And what else? I appreciate my life partner, Anne, and all the joy that she brings into my life. We laugh together, and she's smart and funny and inspiring, all those things. So appreciate her. And I'm in with that.
Awesome. Well, yeah, thank you for doing this with me today. I'm glad that we were able to record our podcast normally. For those of you who don't had quite the experience last week getting that podcast done, so I'm grateful to have much fewer technical difficulties this week, and I appreciate you for doing it last week despite those difficulties. So yeah, and I'm excited for you for your strategic coach thing too. So I'm glad that you took the leap with that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I appreciate my health too. I was dealing with a bit of a hip strain this month, from in November at least, and I'm grateful to be able to be walking again. And I did some sledding this week at the gym. It felt really good
Nice.
to be able to work on my legs again. So I'm hopefully gonna do a little bit more next week, and I'll just keep going back to it. But I'm really grateful to be able to walk again and run around a little bit. I haven't really tried jumping, but I'm really grateful just to be able to walk again without pain. It's really nice. And grateful to be able to build my upper body in the meantime. That was still fun. So
You're
I
like one of
appreciate
those guys
having.
with the toothpick legs and the huge upper body.
Yeah, most of my life I've been the opposite, so it's kind of balancing out a bit now. But yeah, I appreciate that. I appreciate my health in the gym and feeling better now. It feels really good. And yeah, I appreciate Naja too for all of her help with the packing this week. She's really good at all the stuff that I don't like to do, which is really nice. Like packing all the little knickknacks and all the mirrors and all the difficult stuff to pack. She likes doing that stuff. So I'm really grateful to have her help with that. And yeah, I'm excited for a new adventure in the next week. Next time we do this podcast, I'll be in a new space. So I'm excited for that.
Awesome.
And I'm in.
We'll
I'm
have
in
to
with
come
that.
visit your new house now.
Yeah. And that is a wrap, everybody. So thank you for listening to another episode. And if you have any questions or any comments that you want us to address next time, feel free to leave them below. And thanks for watching and listening.
Over and out. So long.